The evening was meant to seal one of the biggest business deals of the decade. A $3.5 billion merger between Harlow Dynamics, a cutting-edge tech company, and a global investment group led by the Carter family. Inside the private dining room of the Regent Hotel in New York, everything gleamed. Polished marble floors, crystal glasses, and the low hum of the elite congratulating themselves on their own success. At the head of the table sat Gregory Harlow, a billionaire CEO whose ego was as expensive as his tailored suit. He was known across Wall Street for his ruthless ambition, and for how he treated those he believed beneath him. To Gregory, waiters and servers were invisible, the kind of people who existed only to refill glasses and disappear quietly. That night, he was in his element. Surrounded by potential partners and investors, he bragged about his latest acquisition, his upcoming IPO, and his plans to revolutionize the future. But when the young black waitress serving the table, Alana Carter, politely corrected him on the wine pairing he'd just ordered, explaining that the bottle he wanted wasn't from France, but Napa Valley, Gregory didn't appreciate it. He leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I didn't ask for a geography lesson. Just bring what I said. Don't make this complicated." Alana, composed and professional, nodded and turned to walk away. But Gregory wasn't done. "God," he muttered with a laugh, glancing at the guests. "You can't get good help these days. Some people just aren't built for this kind of work. Stupid girl probably can't even pronounce the label." The laughter that followed wasn't from everyone, just from a few nervous executives trying to stay on his good side. The rest of the room went silent. Alana stopped for a fraction of a second but didn't turn around. She didn't have to, because seated 2 chairs away, quietly watching every word unfold, was Victor Chen, the lead representative of the investment group, and a longtime friend of Evelyn Carter, the billionaire founder of the very hotel Gregory was dining in. Evelyn Carter, who also happened to be Alana's mother. Gregory had just humiliated the wrong person, in the wrong room, at the worst possible time. By morning, his empire would begin to crumble, and the stupid waitress he mocked would be the one holding the pen that erased his billion-dollar future. The air in the Regent Hotel's private dining hall carried a quiet kind of luxury, not loud, but deliberate. Every detail was designed to whisper wealth. The ivory linens, the gold-trimmed glassware, the string quartet playing softly in the corner. The waitstaff moved in smooth formation, each step choreographed with precision, and among them was Alana Carter. Her posture straight, her smile calm, her mind already 3 steps ahead of each guest's need. Alana wasn't new to this world. She'd worked in fine dining for years, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Service to her was an art form, attention to detail, timing, respect. She knew this evening would be particularly important. She'd volunteered to help when her staff was short-handed. What most people didn't know was that she wasn't just an employee of the Regent. She was the co-owner, the daughter of Evelyn Carter, the woman who had built the Carter Hospitality Group from the ground up. But tonight wasn't about her. Tonight was about business. A massive corporate merger between Harlow Dynamics, Gregory Harlow's tech empire, and Carter International Investments. The deal would be historic, worth $3.5 billion, merging cutting-edge technology with global real estate infrastructure. Every executive in the room was on edge, aware that one misplaced word could shift the balance. Gregory Harlow, however, felt no such pressure. He was riding high on ego. He'd arrived 20 minutes late, flanked by his assistants, flashing that smug smile that made his employees nervous, and his rivals roll their eyes. He shook hands half-heartedly, talked louder than necessary, and barely acknowledged the staff who pulled out his chair or poured his drink. When Alana approached his side with the first course and wine list, she did so with her usual calm courtesy. "Good evening, sir. Would you like to begin with the Sauvignon Blanc or the Pinot Noir?" Gregory didn't look up. "The French one." Alana glanced at the list. "Sir, the Sauvignon Blanc is actually from Napa Valley. The Pinot Noir is from France." That was when he lifted his eyes, smirking like a man who couldn't stand being corrected by someone in an apron. "Did I ask for a lecture, sweetheart? Just bring the bottle." The word sweetheart hung in the air like a slap. Several guests exchanged uneasy looks. Alana simply nodded and walked away, her expression unreadable. Gregory chuckled, leaning back. "You try to be polite, and you still get attitude," he said, gesturing toward her retreating figure. "People don't know their place anymore." There was an awkward pause. Then, forcing a thin laugh, one of his executives muttered something about kids these days. But not everyone was laughing. Across the table sat Victor Chen, A reserved man in his early 50s with sharp eyes and a reputation for reading people better than balance sheets. He'd been quiet most of the evening, assessing Gregory's behavior. Now he sat perfectly still, his gaze following Alana as she moved gracefully around the room. He'd met her once before, years ago, during a charity event in Hong Kong hosted by Evelyn Carter. He recognized the poise, the professionalism, the quiet strength. There was no doubt in his mind who she was, and Gregory had just insulted the daughter of the very woman whose company was about to make or break his career. Alana returned with the wine, setting the bottle gently on the table. "Your Pinot Noir, sir," she said, her voice even, her posture unshaken. Gregory smirked. "At least you got it right this time." Victor's jaw tightened. "Mr. Harlow," he said calmly, "that's enough." Gregory blinked, surprised. "Excuse me? You're being disrespectful," Victor said plainly, his tone cutting through the air like a blade. The other executives froze, eyes darting between the two men. Gregory laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Relax, Victor. I'm just making conversation." "She's fine." But Alana had already stepped back, her professionalism unbroken. "It's quite all right," she said gently. "I'm used to it." That single line, "I'm used to it," landed heavier than any argument could. Victor's eyes softened, but Gregory missed it entirely. He shrugged, muttered something about people being too sensitive these days, and turned his attention back to bragging about his upcoming expansion in Singapore. Dinner went on, but the atmosphere had shifted. The laughter sounded forced, the conversations brittle. Even Gregory's own team seemed distant, uncomfortable with how their boss had just humiliated someone over nothing. Meanwhile, in a suite upstairs, Evelyn Carter sat reviewing the final details of the merger contract. She'd been preparing for this partnership for months, hoping to combine her company's global network with Harlow's tech capabilities. Her assistant entered quietly, handing her a phone. "Ma'am," he said, "you might want to see this." It was a text from Victor Chen. "Dinner not going well. Your daughter handled herself gracefully, but Harlow just embarrassed her publicly." Evelyn froze mid-breath. "What?" Her assistant hesitated. "Should we—" "No," Evelyn interrupted. "Finish the preparations for tomorrow. I'll handle Mr. Harlow myself." Back downstairs, dessert was being served. Gregory, now on his third glass of wine, seemed oblivious to the cold energy around him. He rambled about innovation, global dominance, and fixing inefficiencies, which, judging by his tone, seemed to include human beings. When Alana came by to clear a few plates, he looked up at her again. "You know," he said casually, "you're actually pretty smart for someone in your line of work. Maybe if you'd paid attention in school, you'd be sitting at the table instead of serving it." It was meant to sound charming. It came out poisonous. For a split second, the room went dead quiet. Even the string quartet paused mid-note. Alana didn't react. She simply met his gaze, not with anger, but with calm, measured clarity. "Some of us don't need a seat at every table, Mr. Harlow," she said softly. "Some of us own the building." A few heads turned, startled. Gregory frowned, unsure if she was being clever or defiant. But Victor smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said the game just changed. Gregory waved dismissively. "Right, sure. Let's stick to serving wine, shall we?" "Of course," Alana said, her tone polite as ever. "Good evening, gentlemen." She turned and walked away, quiet, composed, untouchable. When she disappeared through the kitchen doors, Victor leaned toward Gregory and said quietly, "You just made the biggest mistake of your career." Gregory chuckled, thinking it was exaggeration. "What, for correcting a waitress?" Victor shook his head. "No, for disrespecting a Carter." Gregory's smile faltered. What?" But Victor didn't answer. He simply raised his glass, took a slow sip, and said, "You'll find out tomorrow." And he was right, because by sunrise, the man who had laughed at a stupid waitress would wake up to find his billion-dollar empire slipping through his fingers, one signed document away from collapse. The next morning, Gregory Harlow woke up in his penthouse suite feeling unstoppable. The night before had been, in his mind, a success. The dinner had gone smoothly, the investors seemed impressed, and the contract signing was only a few hours away. He poured himself a black coffee, adjusted his cufflinks, and admired his reflection in the mirror. To him, arrogance wasn't a flaw. It was part of his brand. He walked into the lobby of the Regent Hotel as if he owned the place, nodding at the staff who greeted him with carefully measured politeness. He didn't notice how some of them avoided eye contact, or how the whispers followed him from one end of the lobby to the other. Upstairs, in one of the executive boardrooms, the atmosphere was very different. The Carter Investment Group team had arrived early. So had the media liaison, the legal teams, and Victor Chen. They sat quietly around the table, folders closed, expressions unreadable. At the head of the table sat Evelyn Carter, elegant, composed, and powerful without needing to raise her voice. She had built her empire with intellect, integrity, and grace. And though she rarely showed emotion in public, today her calm carried an edge. Next to her sat Alana, dressed sharply in a charcoal gray suit, her hair neatly pulled back, a quiet confidence radiating from her. She looked nothing like the waitress from the night before. And yet, she was exactly the same woman. Same strength, same composure. When Gregory entered, he didn't even register her at first. He was too busy shaking hands and flashing his practiced smile. "Evelyn!" he said loudly, crossing the room with open arms. "Finally the big day. I've been looking forward to this." Evelyn rose gracefully, shaking his hand with a neutral expression. "Good morning, Mr. Harlow. Please have a seat." Of course," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "Let's get this show on the road. I assume the contracts are ready?" "They are," Evelyn replied smoothly. "But before we begin, there's something we need to address." Gregory frowned slightly, glancing around. "Address? What do you mean?" "Everything's been agreed upon." Victor Chen, sitting beside Evelyn, folded his hands. "Last night's dinner," he said. "There were complications." Gregory leaned back, waving a dismissive hand. "Ah, that. You mean the little scene with the server? Don't worry, I already forgot about it. People get too uptight these days." The room went still. Evelyn tilted her head slightly, her eyes never leaving his. "So you remember insulting one of my staff?" Gregory chuckled. "Oh, come on, Evelyn. I was joking. You know how it is. Long day, too much wine." "I might have said something offhand, but it's hardly worth bringing up. We're here to do business." "That's true," Evelyn said evenly. "We are here for business, which is exactly why this conversation matters." She reached into the folder in front of her and pulled out a document. "Mr. Harlow, this merger represents one of the largest deals our company has ever considered. It required not only financial alignment, but also moral alignment. We partner only with people who reflect our values." Gregory smirked, trying to lighten the tension. "I'm not sure where this is going, but I can assure you my values are perfectly fine." Evelyn didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned slightly toward Alana. "Perhaps you should hear it directly," she said. It was only then that Gregory's gaze finally landed on Alana, sitting calmly beside Evelyn, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. For a moment, confusion flickered across his face. Then recognition hit him. His jaw slackened. "Wait, you—" "Yes," Alana said softly, her voice steady. "We've met. I served your table last night." The silence that followed was deafening. Gregory's smirk vanished completely. Evelyn continued, her tone measured and professional. "You see, Mr. Harlow, the young woman you insulted, mocked, and called stupid is not a server. She's my daughter. She's also the co-owner of this hotel and a senior partner in Carter Investments, the very company you're trying to merge with." Gregory opened his mouth, but no words came out. The color drained from his face. He glanced around the table, hoping someone might intervene, but every pair of eyes was locked on him. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "You may not have realized it, but your behavior last night revealed more than you intended. We watched how you treated someone you thought had no power, and we realized that this is exactly why we cannot trust you to lead alongside us." He stammered. "Evelyn, please. This is a misunderstanding." "I didn't know." "That's exactly the point," she interrupted gently. "You didn't know because you didn't care to. You didn't see a person. You saw a title, and when that title didn't suit your ego, you decided respect wasn't required." Gregory's hand twitched as he tried to compose himself. "Listen, we can handle this privately. I'll issue an apology, we'll move past it." But Victor Chen shook his head. "It's too late for that, Mr. Harlow. I witnessed it firsthand. Every investor in this room knows what happened. And none of us are comfortable tying our names to yours." Gregory's face turned red. "You can't just walk away from a $3.5 billion deal." Evelyn closed the folder in front of her. "We already have." The words hit like a gavel. Gregory's voice rose, desperate now. "You don't understand what this means. My shareholders, my board." Evelyn stood, calm but unyielding. "What it means, Mr. Harlow, is that actions have consequences. Money can build companies, but character sustains them. And unfortunately, we've seen enough of yours." As she and the others gathered their things, Gregory's composure shattered. "Evelyn, please, let's talk." "Alana, tell your mother this isn't fair." Alana stood last. Her gaze met his, not angry, not smug, just firm. "Fair?" she said softly. "Fair is treating people with basic decency, regardless of who you think they are." Then she turned and walked out with her mother, leaving him alone in that gleaming boardroom that suddenly felt smaller, colder, emptier. Within hours, news of the collapsed merger hit the markets. Harlow Dynamics' stock plunged nearly 18% by the afternoon. Investors panicked. Journalists flooded social media with reports of unconfirmed reasons behind the deal's sudden cancellation. But behind closed doors, the truth was spreading fast. Gregory Harlow had publicly insulted the wrong woman. By the end of the week, 2 of his board members had resigned. A third called for a vote of no confidence. The empire Gregory had built on arrogance was beginning to fall. And it all started with one careless insult at a dinner table. And while he scrambled to salvage what was left of his company, Alana Carter was in another city, quietly helping her mother finalize a new deal with Victor Chen's investment group, one that would make Carter International stronger than ever. As the ink dried on that contract, Evelyn looked at her daughter and smiled. "You handled yourself with more grace than most people twice your age," she said. Alana smiled faintly. "Grace is power, Mom, the kind some people will never understand." And she was right, because the man who thought respect was optional had just learned, in the most expensive way possible, that humility isn't a weakness. It's the foundation of every empire that lasts. In the weeks that followed, Gregory Harlow's world began to shrink. At first, he tried to treat the collapse of the $3.5 billion deal as a temporary setback, a strategic miscommunication, as his PR team phrased it. But the markets didn't buy that. Neither did his shareholders. Within days, rumors spread that the Carters had pulled out over ethical concerns. When the story leaked that Gregory had insulted a woman he thought was a waitress, only to learn she was one of the partners in the deal, the internet tore him apart. The headlines were ruthless. Harlow's arrogance costs him billions. Billionaire's ego derails merger. Lesson in respect. How one comment ended an empire. In the corporate world, image was everything, and Gregory's image had been shattered. By the end of the month, 2 of his board members resigned. Investors began withdrawing their stakes, and rival companies circled like vultures. Gregory had built his reputation on being a genius negotiator, a man who could charm or crush his way through any deal. But now, that reputation worked against him. No one wanted to work with someone whose arrogance had cost them billions. For the first time in years, he found himself alone. Meetings canceled, calls ignored, invitations revoked. Even his closest allies began to distance themselves, claiming they had no knowledge of the incident. His name, once synonymous with wealth and power, had become a warning. At night, sitting in his penthouse, Gregory would replay that dinner in his head. The sound of his own voice, the laughter, the look on Alana's face when she said, "Some of us own the building." He hadn't realized it then, but that was the moment his empire began to crumble. Meanwhile, across town, things looked very different. Alana and her mother, Evelyn, had finalized their partnership with Victor Chen's group, a move that expanded Carter International into new global markets. Their hotel chain, already known for luxury and innovation, became a symbol of integrity in business. Investors who once leaned toward Harlow Dynamics now turned to the Carters, praising their professionalism and moral clarity. But for Alana, the victory wasn't about revenge. She never gloated, never went to the press, never even mentioned Gregory's name again. What mattered to her was the principle that respect, once dismissed as soft, had proven to be the most valuable currency of all. A few weeks later, she attended a charity gala at a downtown museum. As she mingled with donors and executives, a journalist approached her, microphone in hand. "Ms. Carter," he said, "there's been a lot of speculation about what really happened with the Harlow deal. Care to comment?" Alana smiled politely. "No, not really. Business decisions happen every day." "But," he pressed, "many people see this as a story about power dynamics, about how you handled disrespect in such a high-stakes situation. What do you say to that?" She paused, thinking for a moment. Then she said simply, "Respect isn't a courtesy. It's a reflection of character, and sometimes, character is what determines who keeps their empire and who loses it." It was short, calm, and devastatingly true. That single quote spread across financial media like wildfire. Within days, she was being hailed as a new face of modern leadership, a woman who led with grace rather than ego. Back in his office, Gregory saw that interview on TV. He watched Alana's composed face, her measured tone, and felt something unfamiliar: regret. Not for losing the deal, but for finally realizing the cost of his arrogance. He tried reaching out once, sending a carefully worded email through a mutual contact. It was polite, apologetic, and ended with a plea. "I'd like to make amends." He never got a reply, because Alana didn't need one. She wasn't interested in retribution. She had already moved forward. Her time, her focus, her energy, they were all invested in building something bigger, something lasting. A few months later, Forbes released its annual Power Women in Business issue. On the cover was Alana Carter, standing confidently beside her mother. Under the headline, "The Future of Leadership is Grace." The article detailed their rapid expansion, their leadership philosophy, and their belief that success without empathy was hollow. The same day that issue hit the stands, Harlow Dynamics stock fell another 12%. Gregory's board held an emergency vote, and by evening, he was officially removed as CEO. He left the building through a side entrance to avoid the cameras. Outside, the city buzzed with life, indifferent to his downfall. As he passed by a cafe window, he caught a glimpse of himself in the glass, a reflection of a man who once thought the world revolved around him. Now, he was just another name in a cautionary tale. Later that night, alone in his apartment, he opened the Forbes magazine again. His eyes lingered on the photo of Alana and Evelyn, their smiles poised, their eyes steady. He exhaled slowly, a bitter kind of admiration settling in. He had called her stupid. He had mocked her work, dismissed her presence, and laughed at her dignity. And in return, she had destroyed his empire, without raising her voice, without breaking a sweat, and without saying a single cruel word. That was real power. And for the first time, Gregory Harlow finally understood what true intelligence looked like. Not loud, not arrogant, not desperate for validation. Just quiet, steady, and absolute. As the city lights flickered beyond his window, the reality sank in. His billion-dollar empire had collapsed not because of bad business or bad luck, but because of one moment of disrespect. And somewhere across town, in a boardroom full of people who admired her not for her last name, but for her integrity, Alana Carter was building something new. A legacy grounded in strength, humility, and the unshakable truth that every empire built on ego eventually falls.